Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A good topic for you today. Let's do it. What's the closest you've ever come to dying? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
Heat stroke in an attic in July. Came to in the passenger seat of my work van with no shirt, with my boss driving me to the ER. Apparently, there was a few minutes before where I was up and talking to people. I have no recollection of it. I got hit by a car full force when I was 9 and flew in the air at least 10 feet and landed on concrete cement. I was unconscious and family thought I was dead. I remember waking when paramedics got there and walked away with a few scratches. At Ground Zero on 9/11, when the planes hit through both collapses. Pretty fucked up experience. Walked away without a scratch, at least in the moment. 3 weeks ago, widowmaker heart attack. Never had one before. The cardiologist pulled no punches. Dude, you could have died. He got my attention. Now taking a medley of meds and eating the heart-healthy diet. Severe dehydration as an infant back in the 70s. I had picked some bug up at daycare. Doctor told my parents to consider calling in a priest for last rites. My appendix burst and the infection spread through my body very quickly. I had a fever of 105 and felt like I was dying. Also, I was pregnant at the time, so I felt like shit anyway. I had an emergency surgery and spent the next 2 weeks in the hospital. Before I was born, my twin and I had several in utero health conditions to the point the doctor recommended abortion. My parents said no. We were born 7 weeks early, weighed 3 pounds me and 4 pounds her. I spent at least a month in the NICU while she passed within a week of being born. When I was 5 years old, my family and their friends went out for a boating trip. We found a nice shaded spot underneath a cliff, and in a freak accident, a huge boulder fell off on top of me and another 5-year-old girl. The boulder was so big and heavy that 4 grown men kept trying to push it off of us, and it wouldn't budge, so they had to dig us out. By the time they got us out, the other girl had already sadly passed on from the head trauma. I somehow only broke my arm and had a concussion. Now in my 30s, it's led to a good amount of jokes of how hard-headed I am. January 5th of this year, truck blew a stop sign and hit me on my motorcycle from the side. Ended up losing my right foot and about half of my tibia-fibia. Shattered the bones. Open femur fracture. Torn aorta. 3 fractured ribs. Needed 10 blood transfusions, crashed 2 times, was teetering on the edge of death for several hours. I got hit by a car when I was a kid, split my skull right open. Have no memory of it happening, but do remember a few minutes before leaving my house, and then waking up on my couch to the ambulance crew taking out our kitchen table so they could fit the stretcher. I was trying to talk to my dad because he looked so distraught, and I was trying to tell him I was okay, but the words just kept coming out complete gibberish, which obviously only made the poor man more distraught, lol. So weird though, because I had been out by myself on my bike, and when the car hit me, I apparently just got up and walked back to my house. It's strange to have a section of time missing. I was clearly in shock though. Spent a few weeks in the hospital, but all was good. Then almost bled out both times I gave birth, so that was fun. Ultra high fever from a tick bite due to tick fever. Medically threatening intestinal bug, going like a hose from both ends. Consumed several gallons of liquid, including electrolytes over 2 days, and still lost significant weight. Dangerously dehydrated once the meds kicked in. They aren't joking when they say that peanut butter is dangerous to give to small children because they can choke. I was eating a spoonful of it as a little kid, and I remember it getting lodged in my throat and I couldn't breathe. I'm gagging, trying to cough it up. Nobody in my family hears or notices. I just remember coughing and coughing, trying to dislodge it, then feeling myself getting weaker and weaker and collapsing to the floor, and then I started blacking out into darkness. I still don't even know what happened or how I didn't die, because I woke up on the floor and could breathe again, with a vomit in my mouth, and my family still hadn't noticed. Got hammered drunk and was home alone. I live a couple of stories up and have a balcony. I dangled my legs over the edge while sitting on the railing. Easily the railing could have broke, or I could have fucked up and everybody would have thought I killed myself. And not just that, I was being a fucking moron. July 26th, 2014. My ex held a knife to me and forced me to take what should have been a lethal combination of sleeping pills, Tylenol 3, and my antidepressants. According to records, I flatlined in the ER at least once, and then he had me admitted to the psych ward because he wrote a suicide note and forged my name on it. Not even 24 hours before that, he and my son, my ex-stepson, tried strangling me to death in front of my son. He had me arrested for defending myself, and they did nothing to him, regardless of the handprints and him cutting the phone line. So I couldn't call for help in kidnapping my son, not his child, all because he's a master manipulator.
Yeah, this resonates because, I think about things now that I did when, before I had kids and I was single and took some chances, like really dumb things that, all for a simple pleasure on a night without really considering all the elements in the equation. So, yeah, relatable. I mean, maybe not as extreme, but somewhat.
My single days. I used to meet random women online for hookups. One time met a lady who told me to just walk into her house. She did not want her parents to know what was going on. I felt uneasy about it. I knocked on the door and pretended to be lost. When the guy was closing the door, I saw two guys in the house with guns. I did not sleep that night. Got into an ATV accident, ran into trampoline at 30 miles per hour, metal bar across my face, 3 fractures in my face, and then it rolled twice with me on it, not wearing a helmet. I was told I should have died by the assistant director of the hospital. If my head was turned 2 inches in any direction, I would have. I went in a pool a few days after my dad died and just started drowning because the water pushed me to the deep end. It was good that had a shallow end and really deep end, and I was short then. My family remembers were close to the pool but didn't come save me. Some random guy ran to help me though. My mom still blames me for it, while I have a fear of water now. I genuinely thought I was going to die because I couldn't swim. The most frustrating thing is struggling and everyone around you is watching like nothing is happening. TLDR, I almost died in the San Francisco Bay. I was fishing on a small boat in the San Francisco Bay. When I was a teenager, I was with my friend and his dad. It was late afternoon and we decided to go in before the sun set. Plus, it was getting a little too rough. As we headed toward the channel for the San Leonardo Marina, we hit a big white cap and capsized. We all swam back to the upside-down boat. Thankfully, it only sank about a foot below the water. The anchor fell overboard, thankfully, and kept us from drifting away. The sun was starting to set as we sat there, freezing with no help in sight. Not gonna lie, I was scared and losing hope. We had probably been in the water close to an hour when a sailboat came down the channel and passed us. We were screaming at the top of our lungs. Thank God they saw or heard us. they couldn't come close enough to get us. I guess we were just outside the channel in shallower waters. They radioed the harbor master and Coast Guard, who came and scooped us out of the water. It took a long time for me to get back in a boat, lol. Being beaten up by my ex. This was the worst time. I was laying on the ground, my head locked, pushed into the carpet. I was being punched, suffocated, kicked all over my back, arms and legs. Not the face, because that shows. I had a kind of moment where it seemed easier to give up, as this was too hard to keep going. But as I had a new baby, that gave the push not to give up, to just lay there, take it, and I left not long afterwards. I remember being so sore that I couldn't wear clothes, as it hurt my bruised skin. Even a sheet hurt. I went in the hospital with a headache, and they found a brain abscess, so I'd have emergency brain surgery and 2 months of IV antibiotics to remove the infection. Lost part of my vision, but it mostly came back. Needed 2 more surgeries in my lung, where I had an AVM, which is where the infection got through, and to my brain, so they had to coil it. I was an otherwise healthy 31-year-old planning a wedding. That was probably the closest I got. Scared the hell out of a lot of people. They thought it might be a brain tumor before they opened me up. Got a nice scar as a reminder. I don't think I was necessarily close to dying in theory, but that sort of pain made me wonder if dying sometimes hurt that badly. I had probably a huge ovarian cyst rupture once, and the pain was so unbearable, I almost passed out driving. Like, could literally feel my body giving out on me, and my eyes trying their hardest to close. In hindsight, the ER is where that should have gone, not home. Severe pyelonephritis, kidney infection. I was 18 and was pushing myself too hard my first semester of college. Took a huge course load and was working 30 hours a week in a grocery store. And I'm a type 1 diabetic. I ground a UTI because it was finals week. The next week, I couldn't stop vomiting. I was pissing blood. I had a fever of 105.5, but the chills made it feel like my skin was ice. My kidney felt like it was being ripped from my body, and a hot knife was being driven into my back. I begged the ER nurses to kill me. They told me if I had waited another day, I would have died. We drove through a storm on the G-German Autobahn. It was daytime, but it was dark as the night. We were driving on the right lane, and my mother said drive to the left. We were between 2 trucks. If the one in the front hits the brake, we get sandwiched. The second we drove left, a tree fell on the road, just barely scratching the car with its tip. If we would have stayed right, the tree would have crushed our car. 4 people died in that storm. Hernia operation. Surgeon nicked my intestine, and they didn't find out until 5 days later, where I had internal organ failure of every organ, septic and septicemia. Woke up weeks later with tubes in throat, up both noses and mouth. I spent the rest of the year fighting for my life, being hooked up to a machine 24 hours a day. Still remember a priest coming to see me, saying something up there must love you, son. Worst year of my life so far in existence. Fell in a pool and nearly drowned. There was no lifeguards because 80s. Was nearly on the Herald of Free Enterprise ferry that sank, leaving Zeebrugge harbor, drowning a lot of people. Was in a house fire that started late at night when everyone was asleep. No fire alarm, again, 80s. Dad woke up smelling smoke and found the fire just in time. Tripped and fell on some broken glass, cutting my leg open. very near the vital arteries down there. Bear in mind, they were all within about 3 years of each other. Since then, life has calmed down a lot, and the closest I've come is once slipping and losing my footing in the Lake District and bouncing about 30 feet down a mountain before coming to rest with my back against a boulder, which was next to a sheer drop. Checked everything was in place and nothing broken, and carried on much more carefully. I was alone and eating some dry chicken. I was really hungry, so I had too much chicken in my mouth, and when I tried to swallow, it was completely stuck in my throat and I couldn't breathe. I ran around for a little bit until I stuck my fingers as deep as I could to try and pull it out. I puked, but I could have died because that's not what you're supposed to do. A couple of years ago, I had developed very severe lower back pain. At first, both my mother and I just assumed it was worse than usual period pain, but it grew more and more severe until the point that I couldn't sleep or eat, and just being alive made me so physically nauseous. After 2 days or so, I finally convinced my mother to take me to the hospital. I was dependent on her at the time because I didn't drive and we lived outside of town. I don't really know why she held off taking me for so long, other than the medical debt we're going to be paying off after. Turns out a cyst had developed on my ovary and had grown so large that it had twisted up on itself. My ovary was black, dying and rotting me from the inside out. The doctors mentioned to me before surgery that I was hours away from death. Not a super comforting thought to have implanted in my brain before going under to have it removed. I regret not taking my ovary when it was offered to me afterwards, just because it's kind of funny and fucked up to have a dead ovary just in a jar, but the visceral photos of it that I was shown afterwards was enough for me to just want to move on and forget it happened. My gynecologist at the time suggested I send the photo of it out as Christmas card. Anaphylaxis at 16. Before I got 2 feet in the door of the ER, the receptionist jumped up and screamed I was having an allergic reaction, called some code over the speaker, and before I knew it, I was in a room surrounded by like 15 medical personnel. Had the ER doctor look me in my swollen, barely open eyes and tell me that they were giving me a shot of epinephrine and it would make my heart race, that they didn't have time to administer any more of them. So, if the first shot didn't work, they'd have to cut into my throat to establish an airway, and they wouldn't have time to put me out. I was already struggling bad to breathe, and let me tell you, I really couldn't breathe after that. Luckily, the first shot worked. I was kidnapped, drugged, S8'd in college, and they made plans to kill me. Then they got too drunk themselves and fell asleep on the job. I didn't know about it until almost a decade later, when I had severe PTSD and chronic pain, sending me to the hospital, only to find out this happened when reprocessing the pain with EMDR, and all the memories surfaced. Absolutely wild what our bodies can do to record and place memory, even when drugged. Had meningitis in my brainstem as a toddler. Somehow survived that. Then, 5 years ago, I got hit by a Dodge Dakota going like 40 on the driver's side of my car. Came back to a cop in my face like, "Hey dude, listen to me. Which way did they go? What direction did they go in?" And I was just like, huh? I didn't even realize what happened, and it slowly came back to me. But the guy that hit me was lying gone What have I then? Apparently, all I had was a bruised sternum, and my whole body ached like hell the next day, but no broken bones, thank God. When I was like 5 or 6 years old, my mom took my younger sister and I on a walk around the block. She was pushing my sister in a stroller, and I was on one of those big kick scooters. We lived on a hilly side of town, and there was a particularly big hill on the way home. I rode down it at full speed, and the scooter like a dumbass, and with no helmet, no pads of any kind. Maybe halfway down the front wheel must have got caught in a hole in the sidewalk or something. I got flipped over the front, and I guess tumbled the rest of the way down. The sidewalk was right next to my busy road. It's pretty lucky that I didn't make my way over that direction, as I fell and got run over. Somehow, only ended up with some bruises. Pretty good chance I was concussed, too, but we never got it checked out. Stopped taking my medication and grabbed my gun. Came close to pulling the trigger, but my mom surprised me and started talking to me. It took me out of the moment. She doesn't know what I nearly did. That was back in March. I'm loads better now, and talk to a therapist once in a while. Quitting cold turkey on anti-anxiety or depressants medication isn't recommended, and the withdrawal effects are absolutely crazy. If you're thinking about doing it, I seriously recommend talking to your doctor first to safely taper off. A lot of things happened so quickly that I wasn't able to process all of it, which led to that. Brother-in-law had a mental breakdown and went on a fire-setting murder spree. My husband found his parents dead in their home and not knowing where his brother was. Called me to tell me to get the dogs out of the house and run. A neighbor saw me struggling and let me put the dogs in her garage while we made small talk in the living room. I finally heard from my husband that his brother was dead. Scariest thing ever. And we will never know if he was on his way to our house.